Welcome back to Keep Creative in Conversation, and I'm joined once again with Lydia Brearley from Enkel. She is a sustainable fashion consultant, and she's joining us following up from Top 5 of 2025, the fashion trends of sustainable fashion specifically, and how we're going to keep an eye on what's coming out this year. But really what we're going to do this week is focus a little bit more on top 3 things per week, and really we're going to call this Latest with Lydia. Welcome back, Lydia. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks, Andrew. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. And thank you for joining me again. And I think really what we're trying to do is break down, aren't we? Kind of the simplicity of a conversation that's quite complex, but we're trying to break that down into specific chapters, I suppose, per week, based on what you've come across and what you've seen. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of trying to scour the market every week and see what's going on. And what I want to do here is just kind of bring out some of those key headlines just to kind of keep it on your radar and keep it top of mind.
You do a weekly newsletter, and I'm picking up bits from the newsletter that you've put out for your audience, and you do this across LinkedIn. So we'll follow some links in our social media kind of advertising of what we do each. And I think it would be really good for people to understand a little bit more about topic 1. So the first topic we're going to cover is a company called Circ, and what they've done is they've launched a new fiber club. Tell us a little bit about Circ and who are they?
Okay, so Circ are a material innovation company in America, and what they've come up with is this whole idea of, like, wouldn't it be great if we could make, new clothes from old clothes? So what they've done is they've actually proved that they can actually take textile waste and they can turn it back into new yarns to use for new clothing. And this is really innovative in the industry because actually only 1% of textile materials, does actually get regenerated back into new fibers for new clothing.
I guess my question to you is, what do you see as the biggest barriers for something like that, where they're scaling like textile to textile recycling? And how can, I suppose, collaborations like Fiber Club really address those issues?
So what we see really in the industry is that, like, generally it's really difficult. It's much easier to construct a garment than it is to kind of deconstruct a garment. So actually textile recycling is really challenging. Then we've got the issue of actually making it scalable commercially. So from an availability point of view, from a pricing point of view, and for a lot of businesses and brands, this is still kind of very kind of new in the market. So, brands need to almost kind of test and trial it before they can really kind of go in and start replacing their core kind of material fibers with something that's relatively new in the market. So what we're seeing here is a group of brands and retailers have joined forces together, and that means that they can really commit to like a volume of material, and they can use that across their different brands, which means that they can meet the minimum order quantities, which means that they can start to scale it in a way that's affordable as well for businesses. So it means they can start to kind of adopt and implement this within their supply chains. But it's not just the brands, it's actually supply chain partners as well. So Circ have got something called Circ Ready, which is supply chain partners that have already got this material already kind of embedded in the supply chains, and they're almost kind of ready to go. So that's something you can see on their website if you want to start seeing how you can start to adopt this in your business.
And moving on to topic number 2 then. So we're looking at a company called Wrap, and you've talked about extending producer responsibility with Wrap. Tell me who are Wrap, like for the audience, who are they?
So Wrap are a NGO, and they look at all industries, so not just textiles and apparel, but they look at all industries and look at how we can transform from going from a linear economy to a circular economy. And they publish lots of reports, and they do lots of work with companies globally to really help accelerate that.
Great. And so they're part of, I guess, introducing the EPR system into the UK fashion sector. Is that right? And how can EPR schemes, which is extended producer responsibility schemes, they incentivize innovation rather than just compliance, ensuring brands go beyond the bare minimum required by regulation? Is that really the way to look at EPR?
So EPR, so Extended Producer Responsibility, is basically a framework that's being introduced, and it's about brands and producers taking ownership for the waste that they produce as a business. And in a linear economy, which we talk about, we've never really seen this before. We talk about take, make, waste, and then that's kind of almost where it ends. So what this is about is about businesses and brands actually contributing towards the cost of that waste material. So the collection, the sorting, the recycling, and the responsible waste of those materials.
Fantastic. And I suppose RAP are trying to find a way to lead that, I suppose. Is that really the headline for this week?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually starting to see it happen elsewhere in the world. So France, who are kind of leading the way, they've actually had EPR in place since 2007, I believe, with a company called Refashion. So, they've been kind of pioneering this for a long time. We're also seeing it over in California with the Textile Recovery Act. And then we've started to see some initiatives. So there's an initiative in Spain called Revist, and that's a group of a consortium of leading brands who are working together in Europe. And then just recently, Eurotex have also announced a collaboration. So we're starting to see this, but essentially what it means is it's about incentivizing brands to use kind of lower impact materials. And it's about this idea of kind of really thinking about what happens to a product at the end of life, at the beginning of life when you're designing a product. So brands will have to pay like what's called a eco-modulation fee towards the waste of their products and materials. And I guess the way of looking at it is that the more sustainable your materials, or the lower impact your materials, the lower your fee. So it's about incentivizing businesses to use better products and materials to reduce waste, essentially, and better manage textile waste.
Yeah, and I guess that's one way just to really manage that waste volume, isn't it? Really, in their kind of waste output.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
they're really concentrating on them, focused on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's kind of looking at like the material side of things and lower impact materials, but there's also loads of things happening in the industry with like AI innovation and, producing more of what is going to sell, not producing so much stuff that, doesn't even hit the shop floor, let alone, reach customers and go through sort of their life. So yeah, looking at kind of models around like forecasting and how you actually, create demand for your products in the first place. So yeah, but essentially the material part is really important for brands to think what materials are we actually using and what is going to happen to these products at the end of life.
Yeah, and I think that sounds like a never-changing landscape at the minute as well, in terms of what that actually means and how the taxation is going to come into place for all that kind of part of the business. That moves us nicely on to sort of topic 3. I hear a bit of a U-turn in France. Do we think, with EU delays and rollbacks on sustainability laws, obviously France were leading the way a little bit in the conversation, I feel, at the end of last year with this. And what's happened now? Is it a case of policy versus profit? Are we seeing, well, I guess, are we still seeing a lack of commitment from the key players in the fashion industry? Do you think that's what's happening with France? Like, what's going on there?
So I think this is really interesting because actually the CSRD and the CSDDD or CSDDD, some of this has already actually been adopted. So, a lot of businesses will have actually already put measures in place to start, because the first kind of threshold was to report in 2025 on 2024. So a lot of businesses, the larger businesses, will have already started to kind of put this into work and be starting to, report on that this year. So it is, a significant U-turn. But I guess I think this whole idea of like you can't measure what you don't know. And, if we're talking about reducing our environmental impact, there's got to be a starting point. I think the thing with a lot of these legislations and regulations is that they're actually directives, which means that they will be kind of transposed differently in different member states. And so that in itself kind of creates quite a bit of ambiguity about, well, actually, what are the guiding principles and what do we need to follow? And I think what we're seeing, and I mean, this has only happened last week, so it's kind of new news really, but what we're seeing here is actually there's so much kind of regulation that is that actually stopping brands from being sort of competitive and being able to actually run a business essentially. So yeah, definitely kind of one to watch. But I think, absolutely there does need to be some regulations in place, because as I say, if we don't measure what we're doing, then how can we start to reduce it? And that's obviously vital for the whole industry.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like the rollbacks can sometimes be a great concept with leading the way, and then there's a rollback because of economic pressures. And I imagine, like you said, it kind of gets stuck, and or a lot of companies and businesses get stuck in trenches when there's too much taxation or too much legislation around those products and services, and I guess they get stuck and they can't really move. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the way I kind of look at it is, really all businesses, whatever size you are, you need to understand kind of where the risks and where your hotspots are in your supply chains. And this is
Mm.
a framework to be able to manage, monitor and mitigate that. And, regardless of whether you need to kind of comply with the threshold and the parameters or not, it's actually really kind of understand what those guiding principles are and kind of embedding them in your business to make sure that you're, morally and ethically doing the right thing as a starting point.
Yeah, I love that kind of idea that it's policy versus profit every time as a question mark, isn't it?
Hmm.
Okay. Well, great. Well, that's kind of it for a quick roundup of this week and the things that you're talking about in your newsletters, Lydia. And thank you so much for your time. And obviously, we can follow Lydia and all the newsletters that she's doing. You can subscribe to her on thisisenkel.com and follow her details. And yeah, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, just everything's moving very fast. So we've all just got to try and keep up whichever way works best for us.
Yeah, and I think having these conversations with you is great because we can kind of break down quite complex things in a very kind of conversational and easy way so that people can digest it a little bit more palatably, I guess, is the way to think about it. But thanks a lot for your time, and we'll cover some more next week.
Yeah, see you next week.
Great. Thanks, Lydia. Take care.